Have you ever heard of Asenath, the wife of Joseph in Egypt? Although mentioned only briefly in the Bible, her story raises many questions and sparks curiosity. Who was this woman who married Joseph, the Hebrew who went from being a prisoner to the governor of Egypt? And how did she, as the daughter of an important Egyptian priest, become part of the incredible journey of Joseph, one of the most inspiring figures in Scripture? The union between Joseph and Asenath raises intriguing questions. Was it merely a political arrangement? Did it serve a spiritual purpose? Or was there something more? This story teaches us much about how God can bring together people from such different origins and cultures to fulfill His plan. In this video, we will explore this fascinating narrative, which blends faith, purpose, and the meeting of two completely distinct worlds. Although Asenath is mentioned in only a few verses, her influence is significant, contributing to the formation of the tribes of Israel and the story of the chosen people. Asenath was the wife of Joseph, the governor of Egypt, an important figure in biblical history. Their marriage was arranged by Pharaoh as a way to honor Joseph after he interpreted the king's dreams and helped save Egypt from a great famine. Asenath was the daughter of Potiphera, a respected priest from the city of On, also called Heliopolis, an important religious and cultural center of ancient Egypt. Although she is mentioned only a few times in the Bible, Asenath carries much symbolism because of her origin and cultural context. Her name, of Egyptian origin, means belongs to God, or dedicated to Nith, reflecting her connection to the religious traditions of ancient Egypt. This detail highlights both her upbringing in an environment of pagan beliefs and her family's status, as her father held a prominent position as a priest in On, one of the main centers of worship and knowledge of the time. In Egyptian culture, Asenath's name is linked to the goddess Nith, one of the most ancient and important deities. Nith was seen in various ways, as the goddess of war, of hunting, and also as a creator. Furthermore, she was known for protecting the dead, assisting them in their spiritual journey. The meaning of Asenath's name and her connection to Nith show that she likely grew up in a very religious environment, surrounded by Egyptian rituals and beliefs. As the daughter of a priest, she probably received a special education, learning about the spirituality, rituals, and traditions of ancient Egypt. This contrasts significantly with the faith of Joseph, her husband, who believed in one God. Thus, the marriage of Joseph and Asenath represents more than just a personal union. It's also a meeting of different cultures and beliefs, where Joseph's faith may have brought new meaning to Asenath's life. All we know about Asenath comes from brief mentions in the Bible, but these details help us understand a bit about her cultural and social context. She was the daughter of Potiphera, an important priest from the city of Heliopolis, also called On, a major religious and cultural center of ancient Egypt. The name Potiphera means gift of Ra, directly linking him to the sun god Ra, one of the most venerated deities in Egypt, associated with creation, light, and order. As a priest, Potiphera held great influence, representing both the pharaoh and the deity in society. As the daughter of a priest, Asenath belonged to the Egyptian elite. At that time, priests not only led religious ceremonies, but also managed temples, which were centers of power, knowledge, and wealth. This means Asenath grew up in an environment of luxury and learning, where she likely had access to religious traditions, ceremonies, and the management of temple resources. This privileged upbringing reflects her status and highlights the cultural contrast with the lifestyle of Joseph, her husband. In ancient Egypt, it was rare for women to serve as priestesses, but this did happen in some cases, particularly among elite women connected to the worship of important goddesses. However, there is no indication either in the Bible or other texts, that Asenath followed this path. Her role seems to be more related to her father's position and her marriage to Joseph, the governor of Egypt. Asenath was likely born and raised in the city of On, also called Heliopolis by the Greeks. This city was one of the main religious and cultural centers of ancient Egypt, especially dedicated to the worship of the sun god, Ra. Located near present-day Cairo, Heliopolis was known for its grand temples and for being an important center of religious and political learning. For this reason, it is likely that Asenath grew up in a privileged environment, surrounded by religious traditions, advanced education, and all the cultural wealth of Egypt. Potiphera, as the chief priest of the sun god Ra, held a position of great influence and prestige in the city of On. He not only led religious ceremonies, but also managed the temple's resources, including fertile lands and great wealth. As the daughter of Potiphera, Asenath grew up surrounded by luxury and was likely prepared to marry someone of importance, such as a noble or another priest. Asenath, however, is mentioned in the Bible for marrying Joseph, the son of Jacob, who became the governor of Egypt in an impressive turn of events. This marriage was a strategic decision by Pharaoh, who, upon recognizing Joseph's wisdom in interpreting dreams and saving Egypt from a devastating famine, gave him the name Zaphenath-Paneah. Although the exact meaning of this name is unclear, it is believed to be related to his elevated position and recognition of his special role in God's plan. Some interpretations suggest that the name Zaphenath-Paneah may mean something like Savior of the World or Revealer of Mysteries, highlighting Pharaoh's recognition of Joseph's role as someone chosen by the gods to save Egypt. Pharaoh also gave Joseph as a wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, the priest of On. This marriage was a strategic decision to integrate Joseph into the Egyptian elite and ensure his acceptance among the nobles and priests who were fundamental to the country's power structure. Potiphera, as a priest of On, held a position of great influence, which brought even more prestige to Joseph upon becoming part of his family. The biblical text does not explain how Asenath was chosen to be Joseph's wife, but it is likely that her prominent position as the daughter of a priest was an important factor. At that time, marriages were often used to form political alliances and strengthen the social position of both parties involved, and this seems to have been the case with the union of Joseph and Asenath. The marriage between Joseph and Asenath was not only a political strategy, but also a milestone in Joseph's life, showcasing his transformation from a slave to one of the most important people in Egypt. The union also represented the meeting of two very different cultures: Joseph, with his faith in the God of Israel, and Asenath, who came from a polytheistic religious tradition marked by the worship of the sun god and other Egyptian rituals. According to the Bible, Joseph was about 30 years old when he became the governor of Egypt, Genesis chapter 41, verse 46. This shows that despite being young, he was already mature enough to take on such a great responsibility. His rise was impressive, especially considering that he had been sold as a slave at 17 years old and faced years of hardship before being honored by Pharaoh. The Bible also mentions that Joseph had only Asenath as his wife, without referencing other marriages or relationships. This is interesting, as many Egyptian leaders and others in that era often had multiple wives and concubines. Joseph's story, therefore, highlights his uniqueness in many aspects. This unique characteristic of Joseph reflects his fidelity to his values and his faith, even while living in a cultural environment very different from his own. The Bible tells us that, during the years of abundance in Egypt, Joseph and Asenath had two children. The first was named Manasseh, a name that means he who makes forget. Joseph chose this name to symbolize something very significant in his life. God has made me forget all my suffering and my father's house. This name shows how deeply Joseph was emotionally affected by the challenges he faced. After years of pain, betrayal, and exile, the birth of Manasseh brought profound relief, helping him leave behind the difficult memories of his rejection by his brothers and his life as a slave. Joseph's second son was named Ephraim, a name that means doubly fruitful or prosperous. Joseph explained its significance by saying, "God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." This name reflects not only Joseph's gratitude for his new life as the governor of Egypt, but also his acknowledgement that all the blessings he received came from God, even after so many hardships in a foreign land. Joseph's two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, were not only a source of joy for him and Asenath, but also played an important role in the history of Israel. Before his death, Jacob, Joseph's father, made a special decision. He adopted his two grandsons as his own sons. This meant that Manasseh and Ephraim would be treated as direct heirs, receiving an equal portion alongside Jacob's other sons. This act was a way for Jacob to honor Joseph, granting him a double portion of blessings through his two sons. At the moment of the blessing, a particularly significant event occurred. Jacob, though elderly and with poor eyesight, crossed his hands while blessing his two grandsons, placing his right hand, symbolizing the greater blessing, on the head of Ephraim, the younger son, and his left hand on Manasseh, the firstborn. Joseph, noticing this, attempted to correct his father, pointing out that the primary blessing should be given to Manasseh, as was the tradition. However, Jacob insisted, saying, "I know, my son, I know. He too will become a people, and he too will be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother will be greater than he, and his descendants will become a group of nations." Genesis chapter 48, verse 19. Jacob's prediction was confirmed in the course of biblical history as the tribe of Ephraim became extremely prominent. Over the centuries, the tribe of Ephraim became one of the most influential in Israel, often associated with leadership, especially in the northern kingdom. Manasseh, on the other hand, was divided into two territories, with portions of land located both east and west of the Jordan River. The adoption of Ephraim and Manasseh by Jacob and the prominent blessing given to Ephraim demonstrate how God worked through Joseph's lineage to fulfill his greater purposes. However, the Bible provides no further information about Asenath beyond the fact that she lived in Egypt alongside Joseph throughout her life. There are also no details about her death or how her final days were spent. Despite her importance as Joseph's wife and the mother of two patriarchs of Israel, her story remains largely silent in biblical accounts. As is the case with other biblical characters about whom there is little information, Jewish legends and traditions have emerged to try to fill these gaps. One such legend suggests that Asenath, upon marrying Joseph, abandoned her pagan religion and began worshipping the God of Israel. This idea is fascinating considering that Joseph was a Hebrew, a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and an heir to the divine covenant, while Asenath was the daughter of Potiphera, one of the most important priests of the Egyptian religion, dedicated to the worship of the sun god Ra. This union of two such distinct worlds is laden with cultural and religious significance. The possibility that Asenath may have changed her beliefs and adopted Joseph's faith sparks reflections on the impact Joseph may have had on those around him. As governor of Egypt, Joseph wielded great political and social influence, leading the country through a critical period of famine and prosperity. His faith in God, evident throughout his journey, may have served as a powerful testimony to those around him, including his own family. However, since the Bible does not directly mention a possible conversion of Asenath, this idea remains within the realm of traditions and legends. Another notable point is Asenath's role as the mother of Manasseh and Ephraim, whose tribes became part of Israel's inheritance. Through these sons, Asenath played an indirect but significant role in the continuity of Joseph's lineage and the formation of the tribes of Israel. It is possible to imagine that as a mother, she may have had some influence on her children's education and upbringing, though the Bible does not provide details about this. The union of Joseph and Asenath represents a meeting of two completely different cultures: Joseph's monotheistic faith, centered on the God of Israel, and the Egyptian polytheistic tradition, rich in symbols, rituals, and gods. This cultural fusion may have been challenging, but it also points to God's divine purpose in bringing together people and circumstances to fulfill his plans. Although we know little about Asenath, what is recorded about her invites us to reflect on how God works in diverse and seemingly improbable contexts. Her story, though incomplete, is an important part of the larger narrative of Joseph and God's plan for the people of Israel. Now leave a comment if you already knew the story of Asenath in the Bible, give the video a like, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming content.